Security will escort you out, the new CEO said, not looking up from her iPad. She said it with the casual boredom of someone ordering a latte with oat milk. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stood there, clutching a manila folder that weighed less than a pound, but carried enough radioactive material to turn this entire C-suite into a crater. But before I tell you about the bomb in the folder, you need to understand how the fuse was lit. You need to understand who I am, and more importantly, who they thought I was. My name is Kelly. For 12 years, I've been a ghost. My official title was Senior Lead of Operational Compliance, which is corporate speak for the person who makes sure we don't get indicted. I worked for a multinational logistics giant, the kind of company that moves everything from medical isotopes to fidget spinners across borders without getting flagged by customs. Under the old founder, Mr. Henderson, the company was boring. Boring is good in logistics. Boring means your packages arrive, the SEC doesn't raid your office, and your shareholders sleep at night. Mr. Henderson was a man who wore the same gray suit for 30 years and believed that a clean audit was better than a viral marketing campaign. He respected the rules. He respected me. Then Mr. Henderson died. The vacuum he left was filled not by his careful, seasoned deputy, but by the board's new darling, Madison. Madison was 36, had a shiny MBA from a school that costs more than my house, and spoke exclusively in buzzwords. She didn't care about supply chains. She cared about synergy and disrupting the narrative. She walked in on day one wearing Laubautins that clicked against the marble floor like a ticking clock, followed by an entourage of consultants who looked like they'd been cloned in a lab that specialized in hair gel and overconfidence. The change was immediate and violent. It wasn't just a leadership change. It was a cultural evisceration. The muted beige walls were painted a stark, aggressive white. The quiet hum of productivity was replaced by the frenetic energy of brainstorming sessions that accomplished nothing but generating empty whiteboard diagrams. I watched it all from my office in the corner of the 14th floor. I'm invisible to people like Madison. To her, I was just legacy staff. I was furniture. I was a relic of the Henderson era, probably clinging to a pension and a Rolodex. She didn't know that my silence wasn't submission, it was data collection. See, in my line of work, you learn to listen more than you speak. You learn that the loudest person in the room is usually the one with the most to hide. Madison was very, very loud. She held town halls where she talked about trimming the fat and pivoting to a tech-forward identity. We're a shipping company, Madison. We own trucks and planes. We aren't a bewildered app startup. But she didn't want to hear that. This is probably a good time to pause and say, if you're enjoying this deep dive into corporate wreckage, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps the team get these stories out there. And honestly, it costs you less than the severance package I was about to fight for. Okay, back to the disaster. 3 months into her tenure, the firing squad started. It wasn't dramatic at first, just quiet disappearances. The VP of North American Ground Transport, gone on a Friday, email deactivated by Monday. The head of customs brokerage, retired unexpectedly to spend more time with a family he hated. Madison was bringing in her own people. That's standard corporate rating, sure. But these new hires were wrong. I started noticing it in the vendor approval logs. My department, compliance, is supposed to vet every new partner. We check for sanctions, we check for conflicts of interest, we check for financial stability. Suddenly, requests were bypassing my desk. I'd see a new invoice for a consulting firm based in the Caymans that had been approved directly by the CEO's office. I'd see IT contracts awarded to companies that had existed for less than a week. I went to Madison's right-hand man, a guy named Tyler who wore vests and never made eye contact. Tyler, I said, holding a printout. This vendor for the fleet GPS upgrade. They don't have a DUNS number. They don't have a website. Who are they? Tyler laughed. Dry, dismissive sound. Kelly, you're thinking too logically. We're moving fast. We don't have time for the red tape. Madison approved it. Just file it. It's not red tape, Tyler. It's federal law. If we're moving hazardous materials, our tracking partners need to be certified. We're pivoting, he said, turning back to his 3 monitors. Just file it, Kelly, or we can find someone who will. That was the first threat. It was subtle, but it was there. Get on board or get out. Most people would have backed down. Most people would have polished up their LinkedIn profile and started looking for golden parachute. But I'm not most people. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. It wasn't fear. It was the sensation of a predator noticing a shift in the wind. I went back to my office and closed the blinds. I logged into my terminal, and I started doing what I do best. I didn't just file it. I documented it. I started a shadow log. Every time they bypassed a protocol, I noted it. Every time they ignored a regulatory flag, I saved a copy of the override command, timestamped and digitally signed. They thought they were stripping the company for parts, selling off the boring, profitable logistics arms to fund their flashy tech initiatives. They thought because they had the titles, they had the power. But they forgot one thing: the higher you climb, the more unstable your footing becomes if you don't check the foundation. And I was the one holding the blueprints to the foundation. I sat there, watching the sun dip below the skyline of the city, reflecting off the glass tower that Madison thought was her kingdom. I lit a cigarette. Yeah, I know, you can't smoke indoors anymore, but I knew exactly where the smoke detectors were and how to disable the one in my office without triggering a building-wide alarm. Another perk of being the person who wrote the safety protocols. I exhaled a thin stream of smoke and watched it dissipate against the air vent. Okay, Madison, I whispered to the empty room. You want to modernize? Let's see how modern your prison sentence looks. I didn't know it then, but I was already holding the weapon that would end her. It wasn't the files on my computer. It was the plastic ID badge clipped to my belt loop. The one with my unflattering photo from 10 years ago. The one Madison had sneered at in the elevator because the laminate was peeling. She had no idea what that badge could do. The atmosphere in the office shifted from toxic to radioactive over the next 4 weeks. Madison wasn't just incompetent, she was actively dangerous. Her strategy seemed to be based on the idea that if you moved money around fast enough, nobody would notice it was disappearing. The first major red flag that something catastrophic was coming wasn't a spreadsheet, it was the coffee machine. For 20 years, we had a contract with a local vendor who stocked the break rooms with decent, fair trade coffee. It was a small perk, but it mattered. One Monday, the machines were gone. In their place were sleek, app-enabled dispensers that required you to scan a QR code, and I kid you not, watch a 15-second internal branding ad from Madison before it would dispense a cup of lukewarm sludge. It's about engagement, the internal memo said. Every cup is a touchpoint with leadership. I stood there, watching Madison's face on a tiny LCD screen talking about paradigm shifts while I waited for my caffeine, and I realized, she's broke. The company isn't making money. She's cutting the coffee budget to pay for the consulting fees. I went back to my desk and pulled the quarterly projections. They were hidden behind 3 layers of password protection now, but again, I'm compliance. I have master keys to digital doors they don't even know exist. I opened the file. The numbers were bleeding red. The core logistics business, the boring stuff that actually paid the bills, was down 18%. Why? Because Madison had fired the veteran dispatchers and replaced them with an AI algorithm that was currently routing refrigerated trucks of insulin through the Arizona desert in July. But the real kicker came on a Tuesday afternoon. An email landed in my inbox with the subject line, Structural Realignment, Streamlining Compliance. I didn't even have to open it to know what it said. I could smell the corporate speak through the monitor. I clicked it anyway. To better align with our agility goals, the Operational Compliance Department will be folded under Public Relations, effective immediately. We believe that compliance is, at its heart, a storytelling function. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud in my empty office. Compliance isn't storytelling. Compliance is do not go to jail insurance. Putting us under PR was like putting the fire department under the control of an arsonist who likes pretty flames. It meant they wanted us to stop fixing problems and start spinning them. Half an hour later, the summons came, not from Madison, but from HR. The new HR director was a woman named Chloe who looked like she was 12 and spoke to me like I was a senile aunt. Kelly, she chirped, standing in my doorway without knocking. Do you have a sec? We're doing a security audit of all legacy badges. My heart did a slow, heavy thud. My badge. My badge works fine. Chloe, I said, not looking up from my screen. I was busy mirroring my hard drive to a secure cloud server that the company didn't own. Oh, I know, but Madison wants everyone on the new biometric system. It's super chic, keyless entry face scanning. We need to collect the old RFID badges to, recycle the tech. Recycle the tech, I repeated. They didn't want to recycle it. They wanted to wipe it. They wanted to erase the history. I'll bring it down later. I lied. I have a federal audit report to finish. Well, don't take too long. We're deactivating the old codes at 5 p.m. Friday. She left, leaving a trail of overly sweet perfume in her wake. I looked at the badge sitting on my desk. To Chloe, it was a piece of plastic. To me, it was the black box of this crashing plane. 2 years ago, after a minor corruption scandal involving a regional manager in Chicago, the board of directors, the old board, had panicked. They authorized a secret initiative called Project Glasshouse. They wanted a fail-safe. They wanted a way to ensure that if management ever went rogue again, there would be an immutable record. They came to me. They gave me a badge that looked identical to everyone else's, but inside the RFID chip, there was a secondary encryption layer. Every time I badged into a secure room, the boardroom, the server room, the executive archives, my badge didn't just unlock the door. It initiated a passive recording of the room's metadata. Who was there, how long they stayed, and most importantly, it digitally notarized any documents projected on the smart screens or shared on the local secured network during that window. It was a digital notary stamp that proved I was there, and by extension, proved what they were doing while I was there. Madison didn't know about Project Glasshouse. She just knew she wanted me gone, and she wanted my access revoked. I checked the time. It was Tuesday. I had until Friday to trap them. The next 3 days were a blur of calculated movements. I attended every meeting I could invite myself to. I sat in the back of the strategy sink where Tyler discussed shifting liability for lost cargo to our subcontractors, illegal. I badged into the records room where they were shredding physical contracts, highly illegal. I walked the halls, my badge hanging from my hip, soaking up the digital exhaust of their crimes like a sponge. By Thursday afternoon, I felt the net tightening. My login access to the main server was glitching, intermittent lockouts. My email password expired twice in one day. They were boxing me in, trying to frustrate me into quitting so they wouldn't have to pay severance. They underestimated my spite. On Friday morning, the calendar invite popped up. Meeting, Leadership Realignment Review. Host, Madison CEO, attendees, Kelly Compliance, Simon General Counsel, location, Boardroom A, time 2 p.m. This was it, the execution. I spent the lunch hour eating a sandwich I couldn't taste in a park across the street. I watched the building. It looked impressive from the outside, glass and steel reflecting the clouds. Inside, it was rotting. I went back up at 1:55 p.m. I stopped by the bathroom. I washed my hands. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. The fluorescent lights weren't kind to the circles under my eyes or the gray strands in my hair, but my eyes were sharp. They were the eyes of someone who had double-checked the parachute while everyone else was busy drinking champagne in the cockpit. I took the badge off my belt loop. I held it in my hand for a moment, feeling the smooth plastic. Okay, I said to my reflection. Let's go get fired. I walked down the hallway toward Boardroom A. The glass walls of the conference room were frosted, but I could see the silhouettes inside. Madison was pacing. Simon, the general counsel, was sitting still. I swiped my badge on the reader one last time, beep. The light turned green, the lock clicked, the system logged my entry, user Kelly. Time, 1:59:45 p.m. Status, authorized. And the hidden code in the badge whispered to the mainframe. Session started, recording chain of custody. I pushed the door open. The air in Boardroom was 10 degrees colder than the rest of the building. Madison liked it that way. She claimed it kept the synapses firing, but I'm pretty sure she just liked watching her subordinates shiver. Madison didn't look up when I entered. She was swiping furiously on her tablet, her eyebrows knit together in a performance of extreme busyness. Simon, the general counsel, looked worse. Simon was a man who had spent the last 20 years trying to be invisible, and under Madison, he looked like he was suffering from a chronic ulcer. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at a polished mahogany table as if he hoped it would open up and swallow him. I didn't sit down. There was a chair pulled out for me, the one furthest from the head of the table, but I remained standing. I placed my manila folder on the table. The sound was soft, a dry shuffle of paper against wood, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. Madison finally stopped swiping. She didn't look at me, though. She looked at Simon. Go ahead, Simon, she said, her voice bored. She picked up a bottle of sparkling water and unscrewed the cap, crack hiss. Simon cleared his throat. It sounded like grinding gears. Kelly, thank you for coming in. I work here, Simon. I didn't come in. I walked down the hall. I said my voice was steady, too steady. Simon flinched. Right, well, as you know, the company is undergoing a significant transformation. We're moving towards a more agile, integrated model. And in looking at the redundancies across departments, we've made the difficult decision to eliminate the standalone compliance function. Eliminate compliance, I repeated. You're firing the brakes on a speeding car. We're integrating it, Madison snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were cold, dead blue. We don't need a department of people telling us no all day. We need yes people, we need enablers. And frankly, Kelly, your energy is historic. It's heavy. It doesn't fit the brand. My energy is historic, I said, tasting the words. Is that what we're calling adhering to SEC regulations now? Historic energy? This isn't a debate, Madison said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. Your role is terminated effective immediately. We're offering you 2 weeks of severance in exchange for signing a standard NDA. If you don't sign, you get nothing. And we will contest your unemployment claims on the grounds of performance issues. Performance issues, I said. I have 12 years of perfect reviews, Madison. You've been here 4 months. And in those 4 months, you failed to adapt, she said, smiling. It was a shark's smile. You're obstructive. You're a bottleneck. You're done, she turned back to her iPad. The meeting was over in her mind. I was already deleted. Simon has the paperwork, she said to the air. Sign it, leave your laptop, and security will escort you out. I have a strategy call in 5 minutes. Goodbye, Kelly. The disrespect was breathtaking. It was a masterclass in dehumanization. She wanted me to feel small. She wanted me to feel like a confused, middle-aged woman being put out to pasture because she couldn't figure out how to use Slack. But I didn't feel small. I felt like a demolition expert watching the timer tick down to 0. I looked at Simon. He was sliding a thick document toward me. The NDA, the gag order. I'm not signing that, Simon, I said softly. Madison let out a loud, theatrical sigh. Oh my God. Simon calls security. I don't have time for breakdown. If she wants to leave the hard way, she can leave the hard way. Security will escort you out, she repeated, the words dripping with disdain. I reached for my belt loop. I unclipped my badge. The plastic click echoed in the room. You're right, Madison, I said. Security should be here, but not for me. I didn't hand the badge to her. I slid it across the mahogany table toward Simon. It spun slowly, sliding over the polished wood like a hockey puck, and came to a stop right in front of his shaking hands. "What is this?" Madison asked, annoyed. "Simon," I said, ignoring her. "Look at the back of the badge. Look at the serial number under the barcode." Simon looked at me, confused. He picked up the badge. He flipped it over. He adjusted his glasses. He read the tiny string of numbers printed in red ink. Auth board exec 001 alpha. His face went from pale to the color of old ash. He dropped the badge like it was burning his fingers. "Oh," he whispered. It was the sound of a man watching his career evaporate. "What?" Madison barked. "What is it?" "Ma'am," Simon said, his voice trembling so hard the water bottle on the table vibrated. "We need to delay the board meeting. Immediately, and we need to get forensics in here." "Why?" Madison demanded, standing up. I smiled, because I said that badge isn't just a kiss, and it's a wire. Silence is a funny thing. In a corporate boardroom, silence usually means someone is thinking. But this silence, this was the silence of a heart stopping. Madison looked between me and Simon, her irritation morphing into confusion. She hated being confused. It made her look like she wasn't the smartest person in the room, which was her greatest fear. "Simon, speak to me," she snapped. "It's an ID badge. Throw it in the trash and get security up here." Simon didn't move. He was staring at the badge on the table as if it were a live cobra. He looked up at Madison, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not that I might lose my bonus fear. That I might lose my law license and freedom fear. "Madison," Simon said, his voice barely a whisper. "Do you know what code alpha means in the legacy security protocols?" "I don't care about legacy protocols," she shouted. "I care about this woman leaving my office." "It means," Simon continued, ignoring her, "that this badge has board-level executive clearance. But more than that, it means it's a roving audit device." He looked at me. "Kelly, how long has this been active?" "Since the day Mr. Henderson died," I said calmly. "The audit committee reactivated Project Glasshouse. They didn't trust the transition. They wanted eyes on the ground. I'm the eyes." Madison laughed. It was a shrill, nervous sound. "You're lying? That's sci-fi bullshit. You're a compliance officer, not James Bond." "Check the metadata, Simon," I said. "Scan it right now. You have the reader on your laptop." Simon's hands were shaking as he pulled a small USB scanner from his bag, standard issue for legal, usually used for verifying visitor passes. He plugged it in. He swiped my badge. His laptop screen populated with a waterfall of data, green lines of text scrolling faster than the eye could read. "What is that?" Madison asked, walking around the table to look over his shoulder. "Logs," Simon said, his voice dead. "These are entry logs, but—" "Jesus, Kelly, look at the file sizes. Open the folder marked current session," I instructed. Simon clicked. A window popped up. It showed the current date, the current time, and a list of active files. Audio trace active. Doc notary sync. NDA termination draft V4. PDF attendee ID. CEO Madison attendee ID. Gen Counsel Simon flag. Retaliatory termination event. "You're recording us?" Madison screeched. "That's illegal. That's a felony. Two-party consent state, you bitch." "Actually," I said, leaning back against the wall, enjoying the show. "Check your employment contract, Madison." Section 14, paragraph B. "All executive meetings occurring on company property are subject to internal monitoring for quality and compliance assurance. You signed away your expectation of privacy the day you took the job. Mr. Henderson put that clause in 20 years ago to catch people stealing staplers. You just used it to hang yourself." Madison turned purple. "I am the CEO. I can override that." "You can override future policies," Simon corrected her, slumping in his chair. "You can't override a board directive that predates your employment. And you certainly can't override the chain of custody on a device designated as a federal audit tool." Simon looked at me with a mix of horror and grudging respect. "You didn't just log this meeting, did you?" "I've logged everything, Simon," I said, "for 4 months. Every time I walked into a room where you were discussing how to bypass customs regulations, logged. Every time Tyler bragged about paying off that inspector in Miami, logged. Every time you, Madison, approved a vendor payment to that shell company in the Caymans from your personal iPad while connected to the boardroom Wi-Fi." My badge picked up the packet handshake. It verified the device ID. Madison froze. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a marble statue. "The Caymans?" she whispered. "Oh, did you think encrypted meant invisible?" I asked. "It creates a digital footprint. And when you're in a room with a Class Alpha audit device, that footprint gets stamped, sealed, and uploaded to a server that you don't have the password for." I pointed to the manila folder I'd placed on the table earlier. "That folder isn't my severance paperwork, Madison. That's the index." Madison stared at the folder. She reached out a hand, her fingers trembling, and flipped it open. It wasn't thick, just 10 pages, but it was enough. Page 1, a summary of unauthorized vendor payments totaling $4.2 million. Page 2, transcripts of conversations regarding the illegal firing of protected veteran employees. Page 3, a timestamped log of Madison instructing IT to delete subpoenaed emails. This is, Madison stammered, "evidence I finished for her. And here's the best part. I didn't just save it to my hard drive. Remember that glitchy server connection I had all week? That wasn't a glitch. That was the system uploading the entire terabyte of data to the external audit firm the board retains. The one in Switzerland. I checked my watch. It's 2:15 p.m. The upload completed at 1:55 p.m. The automated alert has already been sent to the chairman of the board. He's probably reading the summary right now. Madison looked at Simon. Fix this. Fix this now. Simon closed his laptop. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I can't fix this, Madison, he said. The toothpaste isn't just out of the tube. The tube has been launched into the sun. I'll fire you too, she screamed. I'll fire everyone. You can't, I said. Because as of 20 minutes ago, when I formally triggered the whistleblower protection protocol by handing over that badge, I am the most protected employee in America. And if you fire Simon, he becomes a witness. I pushed off the wall and took a step toward the table. So I said, about that security escort, I think we should call them, but I don't think they're going to be escorting me. The silence in the room broke with the buzzing of a phone, then another, then a third. Madison's iPhone, lying face up on the table, lit up. Caller ID Chairman Vance. She stared at it. She didn't pick it up. You should probably answer that, I suggested helpfully. He hates going to voicemail. Madison snatched the phone and hit decline. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. You think you're clever? You think a few logs are going to bring me down? I have the numbers. The stock is up. The stock is up because you cut costs by gutting safety protocols, I said. That works for a quarter. Then the planes start falling out of the sky, or the SEC knocks on the door. We haven't done anything illegal, she insisted, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. It's aggressive accounting. It's standard industry practice. Is it standard practice to reclassify hazardous chemical transport as general dry goods to save 15% on insurance premiums? I asked, because I have a recording of Tyler suggesting exactly that in the strategy sync last Thursday. And I have the approval email you sent him 3 hours later. Simon put his head in his hands. Oh, God, Madison, tell me you didn't approve the hazmat reclassification. It's just a coding error, Madison lied. We fixed it. The badge logs show you overrode the warning flag, I said twice. That's willful negligence. In the logistics world, that's not a firing offense, Madison. That's a go to federal prison for 10 years offense. Madison paced the room, her heels clicking frantically. She looked like a trapped animal testing the electric fence. Tyler, she muttered. Tyler will take the fall. He proposed it. It was his initiative. And there it is, I said. Bus, you're ready to throw him under it. He's a consultant, she yelled. That's what they're for. Here's the problem, I said, tapping the folder. Tyler isn't stupid. He knew you were reckless. So do you want to know what I found when I cross-referenced the badge logs with the server traffic? I flipped to page 5 of the folder. Tyler has been BCCing his personal Gmail on every single illegal directive you sent him. He's been building his own insurance policy. But unlike me, he didn't do it legally. He stole proprietary data, which means when the feds come, he's going to flip on you so fast it'll break the sound barrier to get a plea deal. Madison stopped pacing. She looked at the window, then back at me. The reality was finally setting in. She wasn't fighting for her job anymore. She was fighting for her life. What do you want? She asked. Her voice was quiet now. Transactional, you want money. We can negotiate a settlement. A consulting fee. We can wipe the logs. You can't wipe the logs, Simon interrupted, his voice hollow. She told you, it's a blockchain ledger. It's distributed. The moment it uploaded to the Swiss audit firm, it became immutable. Even if you burn this building down, the record exists. I don't want money, Madison, I said. I want my company back. Your company? She sneered. You're a middle manager. You're a nobody. I'm the person who keeps the lights on, I said. I'm the person who makes sure the drivers get paid and the cargo gets inspected so we don't accidentally ship a dirty bomb into a port. People like you think companies are just stock tickers and brand assets. You forget that there are actual people doing actual work underneath your vision. You broke the machine because you didn't understand how it worked. The phone buzzed again. Caller ID, Chairman Vance. This time, was followed by a notification on Simon's laptop. A high-priority email flag. Simon opened it. He read it. He closed his eyes. Madison, he said, that was the general counsel for the board. They've convened an emergency session. They are placing you on administrative leave effective immediately. Your access to all company systems has been revoked. Madison grabbed her iPad. She tried to unlock it. Access denied. She tried her laptop. System locked. Contact administrator. She looked up, her eyes wide with panic. They can't do this. I'm the CEO. Not anymore, I said. Right now you're a liability. The door to the boardroom opened. We all turned. It wasn't security. It was Tyler. He looked sweaty. He was holding a box of his personal belongings. He looked at Madison, then at me, then at the floor. Tyler, Madison asked, what are you doing? HR just called me, Tyler stammered. I said my contract is terminated. Something about unauthorized data transfer? He looked at me. He knew. He saw the badge on the table and he knew. I didn't know, Tyler said to me, his voice pleading. I just did what she told me. Save it for the deposition, Tyler, I said. Madison looked at her loyal right-hand man, effectively fleeing the sinking ship. She looked at Simon, who was mentally drafting his resignation letter. And then she looked at me. You ruined everything. She hissed, we were going to be a unicorn. We were going to go to the moon. Madison, I said, picking up my manila folder. This is a trucking company. We drive on the road, and you were driving drunk. The elevator dinged down the hall. Heavy footsteps approached. Now, I said, I think that's the security escort. To understand why I did it, why I risked my career, my pension, and my sanity to take down a woman who made 10 times my salary. You have to understand the ghosts in these walls. 10 years ago, this company almost died. Not from a bad quarter, but from rot. A regional VP in the Midwest was running a kickback scheme with a construction firm. He was skimming millions, cutting corners on warehouse safety. Then a roof collapsed in the city. 2 men died. One of them was 22 years old. Mr. Henderson, the founder, was devastated. He was a hard man, but he was a fair man. He flew to the city. He met the families. He paid for the funerals out of his own pocket. And when he came back, he called me into his office. I was just a compliance analyst then. I thought I was getting fired. Kelly, he had said, looking out the window at the gray city rain. We failed. I failed. We got too big and we stopped watching. We can implement tighter audits, sir, I had said. Audits are paper, he replied. Paper can be forged. I need a conscience. I need someone who isn't interested in being friends with the executives. Someone who cares more about the truth than the stock price. That was the day Project Glass House was born. It wasn't just a surveillance program. It was a covenant. The badge wasn't just a piece of tech. It was a badge of office in the truest sense. I became the designated keeper. The board granted me a specific charter to protect the integrity of the company operations against all threats, internal and external. I took that oath seriously. When Madison came in, I tried to give her a chance. I really did. But when she started dismantling the safety checks, the very checks we put in place after the city collapse, I knew she wasn't just greedy. She was erasing the memory of those mistakes. She was setting us up to kill someone else. Back in the present, the boardroom was getting crowded. 2 large security guards, the actual security team. The guys who knew my name and asked about my cat stood in the doorway. Miss Madison, the lead guard, Frank said. His face was stone. We've been instructed to escort you to the lobby. You are not permitted to return to your office. This is ridiculous, Madison shouted. I need my purse. I need my keys. Your personal effects will be boxed and mailed to you, Frank said. Please come with us. Madison looked at me one last time. You're a dinosaur, Kelly. You're going to rot in this building. Maybe, I said, but the building will still be standing. They walked her out. She didn't go quietly. She was shouting about lawsuits and misogyny and conspiracies all the way to the elevator. When the doors closed, the silence rushed back in. Simon was still sitting at the table. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. So, he said, taking off his glasses and cleaning them on his tie. What happens now? Now, I said. Now the cleanup begins. The board is going to want a head on a spike, Simon said. Madison is gone, but they're going to look at legal. They're going to ask why I didn't stop her. You were intimidated, I said. She created a hostile work environment. You were afraid of retaliation. That's the narrative, Simon. Stick to it. He looked at me, surprised. You're helping me? I don't care about you, Simon, I said honestly. You're weak, but you're not malicious. Madison was the cancer. You were just the infected tissue. If we cut her out, maybe the rest can heal. Besides, you know where the bodies are buried. If they fire you, we lose the institutional knowledge of the last 4 months. I need you to help me decode her files. Decode? She used a private encryption key for the Project Phoenix files, I said. The files regarding the asset liquidation. You have the key, don't you? Simon hesitated. Then he nodded. I have it. Good. Because the auditors are going to be herein? I checked my watch, 45 minutes, and I want to have a roadmap ready for them. I picked up my badge from the table. I clipped it back onto my belt loop. It felt heavy. It felt right. Come on, Simon, I said. Let's go to your office. We have a lot of work to do before the vultures land. We walked out of the boardroom. The office was buzzing. People were whispering in clusters. They had seen Madison being marched out. Saw me walking freely with the general counsel. The dynamic had shifted. The queen was dead. Long live the... Well, not the queen. Long live the janitor. I walked past the empty receptionist desk where the brand ambassador used to sit. I walked past the weird modern art Madison had bought for $50,000. I stopped at the coffee station, the one with the broken app-based machine. I looked at it. First order of business, Simon, I said. Get the old coffee vendor back. Let out a weak, hysterical chuckle. Consider it done. You'd think getting escorted out by security would be the end of it. But in the age of LinkedIn influencers and Twitter victims, being fired for cause is just a pivot to a new chapter. By the time I got home that night, after 6 hours of briefing the external auditors and watching them sweat through their shirts, Madison had already launched her counteroffensive. My niece texted me a link. Aunt Kelly, is this about you? I clicked it. It was a Medium article, cross-posted to LinkedIn, titled, Silenced by the Old Guard, How Traditionalism Kills Innovation. It was a masterpiece of gaslighting. Madison painted herself as a martyr, a visionary woman struck down by a patriarchal, obsolete corporate immune system that refused to modernize. She didn't name me, but she described a toxic, entrenched mid-level bureaucrat who weaponized administrative loopholes to sabotage progress. It was trending. The comments were full of "you go, girl," and disruptors always face resistance. She was controlling the narrative. The next morning, the board was panicking. She's killing our stock price, Chairman Vance shouted over the speakerphone in the executive conference room. The market thinks we're in chaos. They think we just fired a visionary because we're afraid of change. Need a statement, we need to discredit her. We can't release the internal investigation details yet, Simon said, sounding exhausted. It's pending litigation. If we leak the fraud evidence, she sues us for defamation before we can prove it in court. So we just let her trash us? Vance demanded. I sat at the end of the table. I was drinking coffee from the old machine, which we had miraculously reinstalled that morning. It tasted like victory and burnt beans. You don't need to leak the fraud, I said. The room went quiet. We need to leak the hypocrisy. What do you mean? Vance asked. Madison is selling a story about being a champion of the people, right? A modern leader who cares about the workforce, right? Simon said. Well, I said, opening my laptop. It turns out my badge picked up some very interesting audio during her private lunches in the executive suite. Specifically, her comments about the workforce she claims to champion. I played the file, it was crystal clear. The sound of silverware on china. And then Madison's voice, unmistakable and sneering. God, looking at the staff directory is like looking at a casting call for The Walking Dead. Can we just find a way to fire everyone over 40 without getting sued for ageism? They smell like mothballs and failure. Just cut their benefits, make them miserable. They'll quit. The silence in the conference room was absolute. And here's another one, I said. From the day she cut the safety budget. Who cares if the trucks need new tires? If they crash, insurance pays out. It's actually better for the bottom line if a few of the old fleets get totaled. We can write them off. Chairman Vance cleared his throat. You have this on tape, digitally signed, time-stamped, and legally admissible, I said. It's not defamation if it's a direct quote. Release it, Vance said. Leak it to the logistics trade journals. Leak it to the internal company blog. Let the employees hear what she really thinks of them. I already have a draft ready, I said. But there's one more thing. What? She's announcing a new startup venture today, I said. According to her Twitter, she's soliciting investors, So, I smiled. I think the SEC might want to see the files regarding where her seed money came from. Remember those consulting fees to the Caymans? I traced the shell company. The sole beneficiary is a trust listed under her maiden name. She embezzled? Simon whispered. She didn't just embezzle, I said. She stole from the company to fund her next company. That's not just a firing offense. That's grand larceny. Do it, Vance said. His voice was cold iron. Bury her. We released the audio tapes at noon. By 2 p.m., Madison's victim narrative had collapsed. The internet, fickle beast that it is, turned on her instantly. The comments shifted from you go girl to you monster. The hashtags changed from hash I stand with Madison to hash mothballs and failure. By 4 p.m., the news broke that the SEC had opened a formal investigation into her finances. I sat in my office, my real office, not the PR closet she tried to move me to, and watched the news. They showed footage of Madison dodging reporters outside her condo. She looked terrified. Didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt clean, like I had finally scrubbed a stain out of the carpet that had been bothering me for months. My phone rang. It was HR. The old HR rep who had been reinstated that morning. Kelly, she said, we have a situation. The employees, they're organizing. Organizing what? A strike? I asked, alarmed. No, a party. They want you to come down to the lobby. I walked out of the elevator and into the lobby. It was packed, not with executives, but with the people who actually did the work. Dispatchers, drivers, warehouse managers, junior analysts. When they saw me, they didn't cheer. This isn't a movie. They're tired adults with mortgages, but they stopped talking. They looked at me. And then one by one they nodded. It was better than applause. It was acknowledgement. We know what you did. Dave, the head of fleet maintenance, a guy with grease permanently under his fingernails, stepped forward. Heard we're getting the tire budget back, he grunted. Approved it an hour ago, I said. Good, he said, because I wasn't going to put my guys in those trucks another week. I know, Dave, thanks, he said. He extended a hand. I shook it. That was the party. A handshake and a confirmation that we weren't going to die on the highway. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. The next week was a bloodbath, but the good kind. The board gave me temporary carte blanche to clean house. I fired Tyler. I fired the brand ambassadors. I fired the 24-year-old VP of Synergy. I fired the entire external consulting team. I walked through the office like the angel of death, but instead of a scythe, I had a termination form and a security guard named Frank. You can't do this. The VP of Synergy cried as he packed his succulent plants. I have a contract. Your contract was with a fraudulent administration, I told him. And you paid for these plants with a corporate card that was flagged for misuse. Leave the cactus. We stripped the white paint off the walls. We brought back the beige. We rehired the VP of North American Ground Transport. He was bored of his family anyway. The office started to quiet down. The frantic energy of innovation was replaced by the steady, rhythmic hum of logistics. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, problems being solved, not ideated. But there was still one loose end. The board, they were grateful, sure. I had saved them millions, but I had also shown them that I had the power to destroy them. I held the keys to the glass house. I had the badge. Chairman Vance flew in on Friday. He called a private meeting with me. Just him and me in the boardroom where it all went down. Kelly, he said, sitting where Madison used to sit. He looked at me with a mixture of admiration and wariness. You've done an incredible job. You saved the company. I did my job, sir. You did more than your job, he said. You acted as a independent oversight mechanism. That was the mandate. Yes, he said slowly. But now the crisis is over, and the board feels uncomfortable with the idea of a permanent internal surveillance officer with that level of clearance. It creates a liability. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a check, a very, very large check. We'd like to offer you early retirement, he said. Full benefits, double pension, and this bonus. In exchange for the badge and the deletion of the archives, I looked at the check. It was enough to buy a beach house. It was enough to never work again. I looked at Vance. He was smiling, but his eyes were hard. He wanted the weapon gone. He wanted to go back to a world where the executives could cut corners without a ghost watching them. I reached for the check. I picked it up. I looked at it, then I tore it in half. Vance's smile vanished. Kelly, that's a very generous offer. It is, I said. But you're missing the point, Mr. Vance. I didn't save this company for you. I saved it for Dave and maintenance. I saved it for the drivers. I leaned forward. I'm not retiring, and I'm not deleting the archives. Because if I do, who's going to stop the next Madison? Who's going to stop you if you decide to cut the tire budget to boost your quarterly bonus? Vance stiffened. Are you threatening the board? No, I said. I'm ensuring it. As long as I'm here, as long as this badge is on my hip, everyone plays by the rules, including you. I stood up. I'll be in my office, I said, the real one. On the 14th floor. If you need me, send an email. I'll be watching. I walked to the door. Kelly, Vance called out. I stopped. Security won't escort you out, he said, a dry smile touching his lips, because I don't think they'd listen to me if I told them to. Smart man, I said. 3 months later. The office is boring again. It's wonderful. The walls are beige. The coffee is average. The stock price has stabilized. It's not to the moon, but it's steady, and we're paying dividends again. Madison took a plea deal, turns out. Federal prosecutors have a lot of leverage when they have HD audio of you admitting to insurance fraud. She's doing 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 5 years of probation. She's banned from serving as an officer of a public company for life. Last I heard, she's writing a memoir about adversity. I'm sure it will sell dozens of copies. Tyler cooperated and got off with probation and a heavy fine. He's working at a car dealership in New Jersey now. I hope he's happy. As for me, I'm exactly where I've always been. Corner office, 14th floor. My title has changed, though. They couldn't fire me and they couldn't buy me out, so they promoted me. Chief Integrity Officer. It's a made-up title, but it comes with a raise and a seat at the quarterly board meetings. People walk differently around me now. There's a rumor that I have cameras in the smoke detectors. I don't. There's a rumor that I can read their emails in real time. I can, but I usually don't bother unless they flag for keywords like embezzle or cover up. I'm the office boogaman. I'm the witch of the 14th floor, and I'm fine with that. New hires are warned about me on their first day. Don't try to cut corners, the veterans whisper. Kelly will know. Kelly always knows. It keeps them honest. Tonight, I'm the last one in the building again. The cleaners are vacuuming the hallway, the same hallway where Madison told me security would escort me out. I wave to them. They wave back. I walk over to the window and look out at the city. The lights of the logistics hub down at the port are twinkling in the distance. Trucks are moving. Planes are landing. The blood of the economy is flowing, pumping through the veins of the infrastructure we built. It's not glamorous. It's not disruptive. It's just work, but it's honest work. I touch the badge on my hip. The little red light pulses once, slow and steady. A heartbeat. System status. Secure watchdog. Active. I turn off the lights in my office. I don't need to lock the door. Nobody would dare break in. I walk to the elevator, my heels clicking on the linoleum, not the click of Laubautins. The solid, sensible sound of boots that are made for walking through the wreckage and coming out the other side. I press the button for the lobby. The doors slide open. I step in. Going down, the elevator voice asks. No, I say to the empty car. We're staying right here. And the ghost in the machine takes me home. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the Coffee Pot strikes again.